Welcome back to the Conflict Hotline. This month we're looking again at the topic of parenting. Before we get back to our next scenario, I wanted to interview Yannai about what it has been like for him to grow up in a household where NVC principles and practices are the foundation of family life. And Yannai, by the way, is my nephew. Hi, Yannai.
Hi.
So, I've heard you refer to yourself as the product of an NVC system. So can you say a little bit about what that means to you?
Sure. Well, both of my parents are NVC trainers, and we just hold NVC values as really deeply, and everyone's needs matter, even if not all the time everyone's needs are met. So, yeah, that's
Do you have like an example of when is a time when you trust that your needs matter even though they're not met? Do you have an example of that?
Yes, actually, a long time ago I was running down some stairs and I fell and hit my head on concrete, and we actually had a plane to catch later that day, and I really didn't want to go to the hospital, but my parents said, like, you're going to the hospital and that's what's happening. But it was still clear that my needs mattered, even though they weren't being they weren't being met in that particular situation.
What gave you the sense? How did you know that they mattered?
Because previously my needs had always been taken into consideration, and they said, while it was happening, that it's not what they want to do, but it's what they should do for my safety.
Mm-hmm. So they communicated to you their care for your needs.
Yeah, and that combined with previous knowledge of, the fact that my needs do matter to them was enough to make me really know that my needs did matter in that moment.
So what are the benefits of growing up in this particular way?
Well, I don't think I've stayed mad at my parents for a very long time at all, and that is a really big plus. And there's just so much ease and communication that can happen. And again, even if your needs aren't met, then you know that your needs matter to everybody who's involved, and that is really important, because you can still love whoever you're with, even though your needs aren't being met.
And have there been any kind of like downsides, any way that you think that growing up in this way is a problem?
Well, I'd say it gets worse when there are more people involved, but I remember one time at NVC family camp when there was some decision to be made, I forget what it was, and there were many, many, many different opinions. And I felt at the time like we could just work through it, not using NVC, in much, much less time than using NVC. It took several hours. And that's a downside at the moment, but in the long run, you have connection throughout with the people, and I would say ultimately it's a plus. So I would say in short term, yes, there are some downsides, but in the long term, not really.
And is there any way that you feel different from other kids where it gets sometimes awkward or unusual or something?
Well, I don't think it gets awkward, because I can kind of speak both languages, I think. So it doesn't really get awkward, but a lot of times in my head, sometimes I'm translating what other kids are saying to each other into NVC. So.
And you do that so that you can understand them better?
Yeah. And so maybe I could mediate or at least understand both sides, which is really important, I think.
Do you have any advice that you could give parents if they want to transform their relationships with their children?
Sure. One is always remember that your kids' needs matter, and always try to find a strategy that will meet as many needs as possible, because there's always a strategy that will meet the most needs possible. Also, if you have a demand of your kids, such as we're going to the hospital because you have a big bump on your head, don't try to sugarcoat it and make it seem like a request. If it's a demand, it's a demand. And hopefully your kid will actually understand that, especially if that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, if every other thing is a demand, then what way are the child's needs taken into consideration?
Yeah, and also another thing is, in the moment if you're having some dispute, maintaining the connection with your kid is, over the long term, is almost always far more important than getting your way in that one situation. So keep the connection over getting your way, I would say.
Thank you. And how about for children? Do you have any advice for children if their parents don't practice NVC?
Yeah, well, if you can understand the needs behind what they're saying to you in non-NVC language, and you understand that they want the best for you, and their strategy for meeting your needs and their needs is just not what you would like, but you can understand that your needs matter to them ultimately, then it doesn't matter how they speak to you, you can respond with NVC, understanding what their needs are. And a lot of times that will immediately break all the tension, and you'll be able to have a real conversation, as equals.
Thank you. And the next is, I understand you're being homeschooled?
I am. Have been for my whole life.
Can you describe a typical day?
Well, what I like about homeschooling is there really isn't a typical day, but some things I'm into right now. I'm really into chemistry right now, and math and physics too. So that's a lot of what I do. Is I do chemistry experiments, and
you do it on your own? Do you have anybody that helps you? How does it work?
For the more dangerous experiments, I have some parents or adult friends around, but a lot of it I do alone.
And how do you learn? How do you know what's happening? How do you even know what experiments to do?
Well, I do work from books and from just great science sites on the internet. And for especially like math, I like to have some external validation every once in a while. So like I would take a STAR test, not that I have to, which is great, but if I want to, or like the SAT or something like that, just to have some external validation that I'm on track, and then it's good.
Do you have any other interests or projects that you're pursuing other than science? Sure.
Well, I'm really into theater. I've been in many plays, some at the Berkeley Playhouse. So that's another passion of mine. Science, math, and theater, I'd say, are the biggest ones. Maybe writing a little bit. So, yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, well, I would say that for NVC, the most important one thing you can do is just understand that everyone's needs matter, and even if in some situation, not everyone's needs are going to be met, you have to take everyone's needs into consideration.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to go to our next scenario. Stay tuned.
It does not matter anyway. No, it does not matter anyway.